Hey folks, in today's video I want to discuss domain limit and how it could change in the future in Crusader Kings 3. So this is from a post on the forums, domain limit and how it should be independent from stewardship, and I'll leave a link to this in the description down below if you want to go read it and reply yourself and give some feedback on this. But this is the player saying, instead of it being focused on stewardship, should domain limit be dependent on crown authority and legitimacy, and this would reward a player for playing well as a king or queen or a duke or whatever, instead of it being so focused on stewardship. They do mention some balance mods that already make this change, including realism and balancing, the Great Rebalance, and also the Dark Ages mod as well. So those are 3 mods that make this change, so maybe give those a try, guys. If you are interested in this, once you listen to this video, do go to the forum post and you can give those mods a try. Now, interestingly, we got a dev reply to this post, and interestingly, it gave us some information around the realm maintenance patch that's coming in Q2. As they said here, this is something they're looking into, and they're planning to remove the domain limit change from stewardship in that upcoming patch, and already they've removed it in the current build they play internally, but they are doing a lot of testing around this because it is a pretty sizable change and they want to make sure it does work correctly. Obviously, after seeing this, people had a lot of questions, and they did actually come back to reply to some of them. The main thing being there's a lot of testing around this. It is quite a small change, like coding-wise, I imagine a small change, but it does have a lot of implications to the game itself because stewardship is a major part of the game. But as they say here, and I think as the original poster was saying, they believe this is the right step forwards because currently stewardship is by far and away the best primary skill in the game to a destructive degree. Now, personally, I will say, yes, stewardship's important. I do kind of keep track of it. I do also, if I don't have good stewardship, try get a wife that does have good stewardship, or a husband, obviously, if I'm playing as a queen. And then through that, I make sure I can keep as much of the domain for myself. Now, I guess people min-maxing, especially multiplayer games, I guess they do focus on it to a much bigger degree. Let me know in the comments down below if you do this. But it does look like something they are aware of, and that most people focus on stewardship for the sole reason of keeping a high domain limit. Now, I understand that. And I think, yes, that is something that probably does need to change. And it is something I've not really thought about before. So let's go through the options in game that I can think of. Do let me know in the comments down below which version you would prefer to do. Now, as they said in the post, you could do this through legitimacy. Obviously, the higher legitimacy that you have, the more domain limit you could keep. Now, this doesn't exactly fix the point of having to focus on a specific thing in the game. And also, it doesn't really fix the problem of if you have a very high stewardship character and then you have a very low stewardship character, you have that kind of bad experience of having to give away domains just to get under the limit, and then maybe your next character's very high in stewardship, and you think, well, I could have just kept those lands and just kind of grin and bared it to the next character I played as. I can see how that could be very annoying. Now, through legitimacy, that does get rid of that a little bit. Obviously, you would have less legitimacy on your next character, but through things like coronations, funerals, you can get lots of legitimacy relatively quickly. Some would say maybe even too quickly at the moment in the game. Maybe that's something that would change in the future, but you could link it to this. So as you go up the legitimacy levels, that gives you more and more domain limit, and then that would kind of smooth it out a little bit. I think a better way for this to work, or even linked into legitimacy as well, is through that crown authority, as the original poster mentions. As you can see here for the Kingdom of England, they currently have autonomous vassals, and then obviously you can build it up to limited crown authority, high crown authority, absolute crown authority. And this would make sense. As you build up through these levels of crown authority, you get more and more domain limit. This would fix the problem of it like yo-yoing up and down, because you would gradually build this up during your campaign, and then it is smoothed over on your next character. You don't lose crown authority. Although maybe in the future they could change it so you do. Maybe every time you inherit your realm, there's a chance for it to lower down at least one level. Maybe if your new ruler isn't seen as legitimate enough, maybe they could build in some mechanics where after a certain amount of time, this does gradually lower as you're seen as not legitimate. Why would people respect your authority as a ruler? But that is a whole other conversation as to whether that comes in or not, or if we would even want to see a mechanic like that. But I think how it's built at the moment, it would make a lot of sense for it to be linked into crown authority. As I said, gradually this does raise up as you do a campaign, and obviously there is rebellions, different ways this can be lowered. So it isn't just a natural progression, you just get more and more lands for yourself. Your vassals can obviously rebel against you and get this lowered. So there is some mechanics there is some back and forward with this. So I think a combination maybe of this and legitimacy might be the best way for this to go. Now, we do think in the next chapter pass, in chapter 5, we are potentially getting laws for our realms, similar to something that we would have seen in Crusader Kings 2 maybe. So they could link it into that, like how your realm is made up through those laws. You could have a specific law around this, and then you try build this up and down, depending on how well you're managing your vassals. Again, we don't know if we're going to get that mechanic, but that is something we could potentially see anyway through the DLC we might get this year. Now, there are other ways for this system to work. You could tie it directly into your titles. So maybe from a kingdom, you get 3 domain limit from that, maybe 2 from a duchy. Maybe a county obviously gives you 1 domain limit because you have to have that. I do think the problem with this system would be that it would spiral out of control relatively quickly. There are some areas of the map where you can pick up a lot of kingdoms pretty quickly. You would have to have some kind of scaling system with this. I don't think it works too well. I wanted to include it though in this video. The other way it could work is by having a special building similar to how we've got for Nomads, Mandala, Celestial, all the new governments. You could bring a building like that into the other government types like Feudal and Tribal, and then you could link it directly to that. The problem is with that system is that is how the Mandala government type works, and I really like how the Mandala government works, and I wouldn't want a system elsewhere in the game that basically plays the same way. I like when the different government types have unique kind of flavor around them, and I really enjoy playing Mandala. Building up your temple gives you more domain limit. It's more about building tall as a realm, and it really focuses on that. I wouldn't want other realms, especially feudal, to get like the same mechanic basically. Build a castle, and the better your castle is, the more domain limit you can keep. Now, I think if we hadn't had Mandala, it would actually be something I would be down for, but I don't want like 2 government types pretty much working off the same mechanic. But let me know in the comments what you think about that. Obviously, it wouldn't be the end of the world if they did, but I think especially for feudal, they should lean into the law system in some way. So maybe through Crown Authority, or as I said, if we get some kind of laws for the Realm DLC this year, maybe it would lean into that as well. And then at the end here, I think for Tribal, this is probably a bigger conversation around if Tribal needs some kind of rework in the future. I think it's fine as like a starter government type. I think it would be fun if your domain limit scaled off your prestige maybe. So if you were a very prestigious character, maybe if you'd done a lot of battles, you gain a lot of land for your realm, your people would see you as an epic ruler, and they'd be more willing to let you directly control the lands. The problem is with that is it would be very kind of up and down, very similar to how Stewardship works. But I think it would kind of be a fun way for Tribal to work. So the more kind of combat you did, the more epic your adventures would be, the more land you could hold, and maybe even your army would scale off your prestige. But anyway, let's not get bogged down with that. That's probably a whole nother video on the channel, and I'll talk about that in the future. But overall, guys, what do you think about this? Do you want it decoupled from Stewardship? I think it is a good idea to change it. It's just how would that change? So give your best ideas down below and let me know what you think about this. A very cool post. As I said, I'll leave a link to it in the description down below so you can follow along and give your feedback as well, and we'll see what changes in the realm maintenance patch when that does come out. That is scheduled to be out in Q2, so that's probably like April maybe, but we might get some dev diaries, I guess, in the build up to that, showing off the new mechanics and what potentially might change in the future. So as I said, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Hit the like button if you've enjoyed today's video. I cover all the news around Crusader Kings, the dev diaries, news, discussion videos like this. I stream every Tuesday and Friday, generally doing achievement runs, but I also show off some fantastic mods as well. So do subscribe if you haven't already. But we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you all next time.